started. We have some special guests with us tonight that have dropped by. We have Director Santos from District 3 who would like to share a few welcoming words, and also our CEO Norma Camacho also has joined us tonight. And also in the room we also have another director, Director Naya Shu, representing District 5. Okay.
Well, good evening and thank you. I'm Richard Santos, District 3. Thank you for all being here. She just said what I wanted to say, so good night. I was just at a meeting with our CEO, a very good meeting. We have a big meeting coming up with homeless issues and so many issues in the Water District today. And yes, Naishua is right here, as we just said. Thank you for coming as always. And I asked Norma to come over and say a couple of words, so she will, and then I'll say goodbye. But again, I want to thank you all for being here. And I understand had a couple of issues of so people couldn't make it because of some things come up. But education is the greatest, and you guys are our ambassadors. So we sure appreciate taking the time from your families to be here and learn things and, of course, pass them on. So with that, our CEO, Norma Camacho.
And I want to reiterate the thanks that Director Santos had provided as well, too. Again, it's really great to see all the volunteers here and to learn a lot about the district, because there are a lot of things that we do kind of like under the cover of everything, and nothing, what we do and what the staff does, most people don't know until something goes very, very, very wrong. And then everybody knows. And so, but I think it's going to be really helpful for all of you in this room to have a better understanding, to work as our ambassadors, to explain how this system works, how it operates, and actually educate the public out there. And we can't do all of the education, but if each one of us educates 10 other people and those 10 educate others, we could really spread that education throughout the whole county very, very rapidly. So that's our hope. And again, I appreciate all of you being here and taking the time. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Norma. All right, I would like to introduce now our Chief Operating Officer of our Watersheds for Santa Clara Valley Water District. She has been with the district for 27 years and has held the positions of Assistant Operating Officer of Water Supply, Deputy Administrative Officer of Corporate Business Services, and Deputy Operating Officer of Watersheds Design and Construction. So I would like to welcome Melanie Richardson.
Okay, thank you, Marta, and good evening, everybody. As Marta said, I'm Melanie Richardson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Watersheds, and actually it's over 28 years now. That was a year old. So I have been here for quite a while, and I wanted to start off by just giving you a little bit of an overview of what Watersheds is. I think most of you know that we have a water utility business and also a watersheds business, so I want to talk a little bit about that. First of all, by starting out by showing you that in Santa Clara County there are 5 major watersheds. There's our Coyote watershed, which is over on the east side. That's the largest watershed in this county. Guadalupe, which is in the central part of San Jose. Our Uvas Llagas, which is down in South County. And then we have the West Valley and Lower Peninsula watersheds, which are on the west side. So what a lot of you probably don't know is there are about 700 miles of creeks in Santa Clara County, but the district only owns about 30% of those. So we don't have rights and access to all of the creek property in Santa Clara County. I think a lot of people think that we own all the creeks. There are a lot of private property along the creeks, and there are also properties owned by other agencies, such as City of San Jose or the county or other agencies. So that does make it a little bit more difficult to do all of our work. So in Watersheds, we divide our work into 3 major areas. We have a water stewardship and planning division, a design and construction division, and an operations and maintenance division. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about what each of those divisions do, just to give you a sample of our work. So overall, what our goal is in Watersheds is to provide flood protection and environmental stewardship in Santa Clara County. So our stewardship and planning division, this consists of long-range planning engineers, environmental planners, biologists, water resources specialists, those types of positions that focus on long-term planning projects and stewardship type projects. And to give you a couple of examples of what that means, you probably all recall the floods back in February 2017 that happened over on Coyote Creek. We now have a group of engineers in this division that are working on doing a flood protection project to make sure that that kind of flooding doesn't occur again along a reach of Coyote Creek from Montague Expressway to Tully Road. So that's about a 9-mile reach that they're focusing on implementing measures, and they're doing a long-term study right now and reviewing all the various alternatives and coming up with a plan for how we're going to protect people from flooding in that section of creek. Another example of work that's being done in this division is an assessment of all the fish passage barriers in Stevens Creek. So Stevens Creek is a steelhead stream, but there are a lot of barriers that keep steelhead from being able to reach the upper watersheds where the best habitat exists, and in fact on the order of 40 barriers. So what our group of folks over there is doing is assessing all of those various fish barriers and prioritizing them in terms of which are the most important ones to take out first, and coming up with kind of a schedule and a plan for how to move through and remove those barriers so the fish can get to the upper watersheds. Another important area in our stewardship and planning is our hydraulics and hydrology section. And I know this probably sounds a little complicated, but these are the folks that really collect and maintain watershed data, including precipitation data, stream gauge data, stream flow data. We have about 100 stream gauges sprinkled throughout Santa Clara County that capture stream flow data during different storm events. And then they also collect storm data after storms. They go out and measure the high water marks on certain creeks to determine, they can, by using the rain flow data and the stream data, they can figure out what level of event occurred and how much that impacted a stream. They run computer models and do assessments and come up with tools that help the engineers plan the capital projects that we do in the watersheds. Another important function, though, of our H&H group is they are kind of the heart and soul of our emergency operations when we open our emergency operations center during a major flooding event or potential flooding event. An example was last February 13th and 14th, just less than a month ago, I guess, where we had a major rain event and the mayor of San Jose called for an evacuation of Guadalupe River near Alma. It was really our H&H group were the ones that were monitoring that and assessing that and giving the real-time data that allowed the city to make that call. We actually had a person go to their emergency operations center, one of our H&H people, because they can read and interpret the data and give them the information, the real-time information they need to make decisions. Okay, I'm going to move over to our design and construction division. Design and construction is probably how it sounds. They design and construct the major capital projects that we do for both flood protection and stewardship. And a couple examples of projects that we've recently worked on. One is the San Francisco Creek project from the Bay to Highway 101, and that's at the northern part of our county, and the creek actually is on the Santa Clara San Mateo County line. And this is a project that we've been working on for many, many years, probably over 10 years, to plan, design, and we finally completed this project in December of 2018. It's about a $40 million project, and what it does is now provide protection to those neighborhoods that have historically flooded in Palo Alto and East Palo Alto. Back in 1998, they had a historic flood of record, and then back in December 2012, they had another flood that significantly impacted people both on East Palo Alto side as well as businesses and some homes on the Palo Alto side. But now with this new flood protection project in place, which consists of excavating the channel larger, putting in levees and flood walls, along with some other environmental features, it now allows a 100-year flood to pass in that area and protect those people. So that's a pretty big accomplishment. Another project that we're currently working on, we're in the design phase, is our Almaden Lake project. Almaden Lake is just right over by the district in Almaden Lake Park. You're probably familiar with it, you've probably seen it. And Guadalupe River kind of runs into that lake. And that lake, because it just sits there, actually causes the temperature to increase in the creek and is an impediment to fish moving further up the stream. Because predator fish can get to them more easily, and because they heat up, what we're doing is we're going to be building the project such that the creek runs through the lake. And so we're going to be constructing levees on either side and putting the creek through the lake to allow for safe fish passage upstream to the higher reaches of Guadalupe River. So that's currently in the design phase, and it will go to construction hopefully in the next year or two. But that's a project that's primarily done for environmental stewardship. And then lastly, last but not least, we have our operations and maintenance division. And they're charged with maintaining all of these projects we build, as well as doing a lot of other type of work that I'll focus on here. But once we build projects, there's a lot of work that goes into maintaining and assuring that they keep the capacity that we originally provided. So we have a stream maintenance program that allows our staff to go in every year between June and October and do a variety of stream maintenance projects under a permit from all the federal and state regulatory agencies, such as removing sediment out of the streams, managing the vegetation, and also doing like erosion repair. So they go in and they do intense amount of work. These crews, our O&M crews, work 6 days a week during that season because they have to get everything done during that time frame. But in addition, operations and maintenance has other responsibilities, such as cleaning up the homeless encampments. And I am sure all of you are familiar that this has become an increasingly difficult problem. And because we own a lot of the creekside property, as I talked about earlier, about 1/3 of the creekside property, we're responsible to ensure that water quality is not degraded along our property. And it's also become a problem for protecting the safety of our staff. Our staff are having difficulty just going in and doing their jobs, like collecting water quality data or doing surveying or other kinds of work, because they run into these encampments which threaten their safety. So we have been cleaning up these homeless encampments for several years now, and the amount is just growing and increasing. We originally planned to spend, I think, around $250,000 a year when we went out to the voters and do about 52 cleanups a year. And last year, I believe we spent over $1.4 million and did over 500 cleanups a year. It's just getting to be a more and more difficult problem. So that's another issue that our O&M staff faces. They do other special projects like removing hazardous trees and getting invasive plants out of the watersheds as well. So those are just some examples of the work we do, and I know you're going to hear more about specific projects tonight. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Melanie. That was really informative and a really great overview into watersheds. I hope you guys found that very informative. So now we're going to delve in and talk a little bit more about our Safe Clean Water program. I'm going to introduce Jessica Collins. She's the new unit manager for our Watersheds Business Planning Unit. And without much further ado, I'm going to introduce her to come up here and give her presentation. You guys also have a bio in your packets with a little bit more information. So get this here started for you.
Good evening. Thank you, Marta, for the introduction. I'm very pleased to be here this evening. Most times I'm presenting either to our board of directors, to our independent monitoring committee, so tonight's a little more fun. Not that those presentations aren't also fun, but tonight's special because my daughter is here and she gets to learn a little bit more about what her mom does every day at work. So that makes tonight a little different and special for me. As I start talking about the Safe Clean Water program, rather before I start talking about the Safe Clean Water program, I wanted to give a brief overview of Valley Water's mission and core services, along with our main funding sources and a history of our voter-approved measures. And then we'll go into the program and we'll talk more about the priorities and projects, our change control process, our independent monitoring committee, our annual cycle, and accessibility and transparency. So beginning with our mission, the Valley Water's mission is to provide Silicon Valley safe, clean water for a healthy life, environment, and economy. And we do that by delivering on 3 core service areas. We deliver clean, reliable water, flood protection, and healthy creeks and ecosystems. We have three main funding sources, along with other funding sources that you can see here. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about funding. I know Darren Taylor, our Chief Financial Officer, already gave a presentation to this group, and I just wanted to highlight the fact that of our three main funding sources, Safe Clean Water is one of them, and this is our special parcel tax. And this slide is actually from our fiscal year 19, our current fiscal year's estimated total revenue. And for the Safe Clean Water special parcel tax, it can only be used for voter-approved purchases or expenses within the program. However, what's unique about the program is because we have projects that cover all of our core business areas that I mentioned before, a lot of our projects also receive funding from either our water charges or our 1% ad valorem property tax, which are also known as our water utility fund or our watershed stream stewardship fund. So projects within the program can have multiple funding sources. Our history of our voter-approved measures. So on November 6, 2012, voters approved the Safe Clean Water and Natural Flood Protection Program, which we also refer to as the Safe Clean Water Program, as a countywide special parcel tax for 15 years with the sunset date of June 30th, 2028. This program replaced the Clean Safe Creeks and Natural Flood Protection Plan, which voters approved in November 2000. With its 5 priorities, the Safe Clean Water Program addresses the needs, values, and priorities as identified by Santa Clara County stakeholders. To identify these priorities, the Valley Water used a wide array of tools and techniques to engage approximately 16,000 residents, businesses, and other stakeholders during an intensive 18-month period. To ensure fair representation, Valley Water conducted outreach in all areas of the county, making sure to include historically underserved populations and providing surveys and informational materials in multiple languages. Each of these priorities has specific operational and capital projects, totaling 37, which have key performance indicators, or KPIs, to keep them on track in meeting the overall Safe Clean Water Program priorities. In the coming slides, I'll highlight 1 or 2 projects from each of the priorities, along with one of the projects from our Clean Safe Creeks carry forward projects that were rolled over into the Safe Clean Water Program. So priority A is to ensure a safe and reliable water supply. Of these projects, I'm going to highlight the Main Avenue Madrone Pipeline Restoration Project. This project is actually scheduled for completion this August, and it's going to increase our groundwater recharge by about 2,000 acre-feet per year, which is enough to provide water for about, I think, 4,000 families of 5, which is pretty significant. And it also improves our operational flexibility. We're going to accomplish this by restoring transmission pipelines to full operating capacity from Anderson Reservoir and restoring ability to deliver to Madrone Channel. For priority B, which is to reduce toxins, hazards, and contaminants in our waterways, I'm going to be highlighting B1, which is our Impaired Water Bodies Improvement Project, which helps the district meet surface water quality standards and reduces pollutants in streams, groundwater, lakes, and reservoirs. Some of the benefits include reducing methylmercury in reservoirs to prevent entry into the food web, improving ecosystem health by reducing mercury contamination in fish and other biota, and supporting regulatory compliance of our total maximum daily load standards, which affect our district operations. And we do this by maintaining existing treatment systems in 4 reservoirs to remediate regulated contaminants, including mercury. And we prepare a plan for the prioritization of pollution prevention and reduction activities, and then implement those activities in 10 creeks identified within the plan. And that can be found on our website for those who are interested in more information. Melanie also mentioned this project already, but I'm going to touch on it as well. This is our Good Neighbor Encampment Cleanup Project. It supports our ongoing coordination with local cities and agencies to clean up large creekside encampments that contaminate our waterways and damage our district facilities. As she mentioned, this particular project, at the onset of the program, we had only estimated we would need to do about 52 cleanups a year, and the demand has far out exceeded that original estimate, and that's something that we're working on now to identify additional funding to continue our efforts, along with identifying new ways to address this issue. So this is an ongoing challenge for the district, but we are committed to delivering on this KPI every year for the remainder of the program. For priority C, which is to protect our water supply from earthquakes and natural disasters, you see here that we have our C1 Anderson Dam seismic retrofit project. The project itself is not a safe clean water project in terms of the key performance indicators for this project description. The key performance indicator here is really to contribute funding to the project itself. And so we've delivered our first contribution of funding in, I think, fiscal year 16, and our second contribution, our final contribution, will come in fiscal year 28. However, the emergency response upgrade project is one that has a little more to it. We're basically developing an automated flood warning system that uses real-time rainfall data to predict stream flows and potential flood risk. And we're doing that by mapping, installing, and maintaining gauging stations and computer software on 7 flood-prone reaches to generate and disseminate those flood warnings. And that work is ongoing, but we are nearing completion of that KPI. In fact, we're planning or estimating that we may be able to complete that this current fiscal year, which is exciting. For priority D, I wanted to highlight our Project D2, which is to revitalize stream, upland, and wetland habitat. This project removes non-native invasive plants and revegetates habitat with native species when needed, and it restores degraded habitat between revegetated sites to create a more contiguous habitat corridor for wildlife. We do this by revitalizing at least 21 acres through native plant revegetation and removal of invasive exotic species. And at least 7 of those acres are funded through community partnerships, which is really great. And we've also developed 2 plant pellets for use on revegetation projects to support birds and other wildlife. And those are also available on our website. Melanie, I believe, also touched a little bit on fish habitat and passage improvement. That's our D4 project here. It helps to restore and maintain a healthy steelhead trout population by improving fish habitat and fish passage. And what we have here are a number of projects under this one project description. So one of the KPIs is to plan and design 2 creek lake separation projects. Those creek lake separation projects are where man-made creek alterations basically disrupt fish migration. We'll be selecting one of those to construct as one of our other KPIs. We're also using $6 million for fish passage improvements, and that $6 million is going to multiple projects. We've already constructed the Evelyn Bridge Fish Passage project. That one's already been completed, and there are others that are already identified and underway. And we're also conducting a study of all major steelhead streams in the county to identify priority locations for installation of large woody debris and gravel as appropriate. And that installation is actually being planned and implemented through our stream maintenance program, which Melanie mentioned earlier. Priority E is to provide flood protection to homes, businesses, schools, and highways. And here I'm going to highlight the vegetation control and sediment removal for flood protection. This is also tied to our stream maintenance program that Melanie mentioned. And through this project, we're funding vegetation control for capacity, sediment removal for capacity, maintenance of newly improved creeks. Those are creeks that were improved with Safe Clean Water funds that are through flood protection projects identified in the program, and then vegetation management for access. And the goal here, the key performance indicators, are to maintain 90% of our improved channels at design capacity and provide vegetation management for 6,120 acres along levee and maintenance roads. Moving forward to our flood protection projects, again, Melanie did mention the San Francisco Creek Flood Protection Project and the fact that we've completed construction on our lower reach, the Beta 101. That portion is actually protecting, let's see, I think it's protecting close to 3,000 parcels, or actually 3,000 parcels is the total number of parcels that'll be protected with our downstream and upstream projects combined. And upstream, we're focusing on Newell Road and Pope Chaucer Street bridges and in-channel work between Pope Chaucer and Highway 101. And this project is one that's, again, very unique. We have a joint powers authority of which we're a member agency. And we work with the cities of Menlo Park, East Palo Alto, and the San Mateo County Flood Control District. For the upstream project, we're currently working on our environmental documents, and we'll be moving towards securing full funding for that project. The Safe Clean Water program contributes a portion, but we have funding partners for this project, and we'll be moving toward securing permits as well. And here are the other Clean Safe Creeks flood protection projects and grants that were carried forward into the Safe Clean Water program. Of these flood protection projects, both Berryessa Creek flood protection and Calabasas Creek flood protection projects have been completed. And nearing completion is our Permanente Creek flood protection project. The Permanente Creek project has three main components. We have our in-channel work in Permanente, we have our McKelvey Park detention basin, and then we have our Rancho San Antonio detention basin. And both McKelvey Park should be completed this year, along with our in-channel work, which was recently completed. So we anticipate that our Rancho San Antonio site will be completed in the next fiscal year. So we're very close to completing this project and delivering flood protection to 1,664 parcels downstream of El Camino Real, including Middlefield Road and Central Expressway. So that's significant flood protection for our community. Sprinkled throughout, I'm sure you saw all of the grants projects. The district has grants through priorities A, B, and D, and our Carry Forward Clean Safe Creeks grants that are still being managed. And in a little while, Sherilyn is going to give you an update on some upcoming grant cycles that we have. So that's something that you can spread the word on. And moving forward, I wanted to talk a little bit about how we implement all of these projects in our program. At the onset of the program, we had lessons learned from our Clean Safe Creeks plan. There was an audit that was performed at the end of our Clean Safe Creeks plan that basically helped us shape this program. And one of the lessons learned that was a takeaway was that we needed some flexibility within the program. We needed the ability to be able to make adjustments and modifications over the course of the program. And so with that, we developed the change control process because we wanted to be very careful with how we were making changes to the program. We wanted to be very transparent to the voters about any changes that were being made. And all of these changes are approved by the board in either an open public board meeting or through a public hearing and publicly noticed. So for adjustments to text, which are text adjustments for correction of grammatical errors, information or data updates, and overall readability improvements, along with schedule adjustments and budget adjustments that don't impact any of our Safe Clean Water program deliverables or our KPIs. Those are all made in open public board meetings through our standard processes, and it's only when we have a modification to the program that a public hearing is triggered. And those are anytime we have the need to change a project's key performance indicator or what we've committed to delivering to the voters, or any funding changes that could potentially impact a key performance indicator. And at that point, we then do extensive outreach. We have full-page public notice ads. We translate those ads into multiple languages. We place them in newspapers countywide, and we make sure that we're engaging our community and letting them know why any changes might need to be made. And then the board makes a decision at the public hearing on those. So we've also got an independent monitoring committee, and to ensure transparency and accountability, the board appointed an independent monitoring committee of volunteers external to the district who track our progress and expenditures of our program and make recommendations to the board as needed. They do this by analyzing our annual reports that we produce each year, and then they produce their own report with recommendations to the board and present those, and then staff then develops our own recommendation, or our responses to their recommendations rather, to the board to receive direction from the board. Again, the independent monitoring committee doesn't direct staff. They make recommendations to the board, and then it's the board who directs staff to move forward. And we do this through our Safe Clean Water program cycle. So each May, we begin development of our annual report, and that goes on through the course of the summer. Our draft report is submitted to the board, usually in September, and that's submitted to the board with unaudited financials, because our audited financials aren't complete until typically end of October, early November. But the content, the substance of the report is complete. And so we ask the board for authorization to finalize the report with audited financials, which we do, and then submit back to the board and to the independent monitoring committee in November each year. And then from December through around the end of February, staff works closely with the independent monitoring committee to really review this report in great detail. The committee typically breaks into subcommittees to address each priority, and those subcommittee meetings can range in duration from a couple of hours to 4 hours, depending on how interested they are in the topics, and we really do our best to provide them with as much information as possible and to answer and address all of their questions. Their role is to look back and to assess whether or not we have been fiscally responsible and on track to deliver our key performance indicators. And so based upon that information, they've made recommendations over the years. A lot of the recommendations have focused on our report itself. And so as a result of those recommendations, I feel that we've developed a very robust report. Each year, our annual report has grown a little bit. We're now at a little over 200 pages, which may seem overwhelming to some, but we try to make it as reader-friendly as possible by including tabs. We have appendices in the back with a lot of information and tools that help the reader digest and understand all of these projects and programs and where we're at in delivering them. And that brings me to accessibility and transparency. On our website, valleywater.org, we provide a program overview. The overall Safe Clean Water program is described and explained there with our 5 priorities. We also provide project updates. We update our web pages on a quarterly basis, if not more frequently, to ensure the information we're providing is up to date and reflective of the work that's being done. And we also have an archive page for our reports and documents. This is where transparency really comes in. We have every single annual report that's been produced posted there, along with the original program report. We have our 5-year implementation plans. There are 2 of them so far. We have our annual rate setting reports, our independent monitoring committee reports, independent audits along with our management responses, and board-approved adjustments and modifications. This is where we show every change that we've made to text over the course of the last 5 years, and we have it all there for you to peruse at your will. So this is, again, on valleywater.org, and at the bottom of the homepage, you can scroll down and see that there's a Safe Clean Water link. It'll take you right where you need to go. And if any of you have any questions, I'm available to answer those. Yes?
Does this, what you're describing, particularly in independent monitoring, does this cover all of Valley Water or just the Safe Clean Water?
Just the Safe Clean Water program, yes.
So they're separate from the other?
We have a number of committees at the district, and they perform a number of different, or have a number of different roles or focus areas, but there are no other independent monitoring committees, only for the Safe Clean Water program.
If I can add a piece of information, this
So, as you know, this program was voter approved in 2012, and this independent monitoring committee is actually one of the features that's built in to the voter approved program. Yeah. So.
Any other questions? Oh, yes.
With the implementation of the flood protection in Upper Penitentiary Creek and some of the others, if those are in flood zones, is it your objective to remove those from the flood zones? And if you can do so, you have to petition the Fed to do that. And if you do and have in the past, how long does it take to mitigate that and get that removed?
That's a multi-layered question, and I think I can answer part of it. And if I can't answer all of it, I'll turn it over to our Chief Operating Officer of Watersheds, Melanie. So each flood protection project that was written into the Safe Clean Water program has 2 KPIs. One is our preferred project, which is a project that receives federal funding. And those projects typically have the goal or objective of 1% flood protection. And with 1% flood protection, if you're in a FEMA flood zone, it would then be that city's responsibility to, once we've completed the project, it would be that city's responsibility to apply for removal from the flood zone. And so I think that might answer your question, but was there another part that I'm missing?
I just want to mainly see if you're trying to create floods and putting in the infrastructure, then there are people, communities that are paying flood insurance or HOAs that are paying flood insurance. So it's, you don't try to remove that from the FEMA 100-year report. It's the cities that have to apply. And do you trigger communication to the cities?
Yes. Yes, so upon completion of one of our projects that removes an X amount of parcels, we initiate what's called a letter of map revision with the cities, and it usually takes about a year for that process to be completed until they actually get out of the floodplain.
Yeah, and just to follow up on my response, I mentioned that each of the Safe Clean Water flood protection projects has 2 KPIs, and I talked about the first KPI, which is always our preferred project. But we can't always guarantee that we're going to get federal funding to be able to deliver that level of flood protection. That's out of our control. And so what we also have as a key performance indicator is our local funding only project. And essentially that is what we can afford to do with our local funding, which is our Safe Clean Water program funding. And so each project has a specific local funding only project identified that has a level of flood protection that we can provide. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Jessica. A lot of great informative information here tonight. So now I would like to invite my colleague, Sherilyn Tran. She's our acting unit manager and also oversees our community benefits program. She'll talk a little bit about our grants and partnerships, and her presentation is really just an announcement so you guys are aware of the different type of grant opportunities that the district or Valley Water offers to the community.
Thank you, Marta. Hi, as Marta said, my name is Sherilyn Tran. I'm in the Office of Civic Engagement, and I oversee our Safe Clean Water Grants and Partnership Program. So like Jessica alluded to, so under all the different priorities throughout Safe Clean Water, we also offer grants. So one of the caveats of Safe Clean Water, the Safe Clean Water program, is that we're going to reinvest some of that money back into the community in the form of grants and partnerships. It's about $30 million, give or take a little, through the 15 years. So we spread that out through 7 cycles. So there are different priorities that we fund, anywhere between water conservation to pollution prevention to trying to support volunteer efforts to do education and outreach on why it's important that we keep our waterways clean. We also fund projects that help to restore wildlife, fish habitat. We also fund projects that look at trying to access more creek trails, nearby creeks, open space. So there's various different grants that we give out. They range anywhere between $200,000 that are available, up to $1.3 million. And so, aside from our water conservation grants, which is open to all, including the private sector, all of our grants are open to public, nonprofit, other public agencies and whatnot. I do have a brochure about all of our different programs. That I'll leave out there so you all can pick one up and see. In the brochure, you'll see our different grant cycles, so you'll know when we're opening each grant program. The approximate amount that we have available during each grant cycle, and some of the key benefits we're looking for when we are putting out our RFP and requesting for grant projects. We have criteria that we review the grant programs on, and then we have a review panel. They review it, then they score it, and then we go to the board. The board ultimately is the decision maker on our grant funding. So we'll make recommendations on all the projects that come in, how much we think the project should be funded, and then the board makes the ultimate decisions. So those are some of our grant programs. We have the standard grant, and the other thing that the board also wanted us to do was look at ways to get money into the community in a very expedited fashion to try to support some of the smaller groups. I mean, a lot of our grant programs, if you go through our RFP, it looks a little intimidating, and it's like 12, 13 pages of an RFP, so you're reading it. It might be a little bit daunting for some of the smaller nonprofits, or even some of the community-based neighborhood associations that don't have a 501c3. So what we did is we launched a mini grant program back in 2018. It is $5,000 max. Anybody can apply for it for small-scale projects. We have groups like Bay Area older adults who've applied for the mini grants. They take their adult population on walks throughout our watersheds to do education on our watersheds. They just were recently funded to reach out to some of the blind older adult community to do education and outreach about our watersheds, about why it's important to keep it healthy, clean. So those are some of the unique projects that we have that we fund. We're really excited about that. It was really successful last year. There is no closing date on that. That's a rolling application process. It's $200,000 available each year for the mini grants. So that means, a max of $5,000. We can fund up to about 40 projects each year. So that's also available, and you don't actually have to be a 501c3 nonprofit to apply for that. So you have a neighborhood association that has some cleanups that you want to do, you can certainly apply for that. So I have a separate pamphlet or a separate little info sheet about the mini grants, and then one bigger brochure that has all of the other grant programs. Okay, and I'm also here till the end, so if you have any questions, you can come talk to me afterwards. Okay. If you have any questions now, I can quickly take it. Otherwise, you can come see me at the end. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Sherilyn. All right, you guys ready to have a little bit of fun? Yeah. And be tested? All right, so we're going to, I know that all of you got the instructions about downloading the Kahoot app. And so what we're gonna do is actually, not everybody has to play on their phone. Since you guys are broken up by district, you can form a team and have one device where you can put in your answers for this. But before we get started, I'm gonna give you guys, open up your apps and pull it out. I'm gonna give you the PIN code so that you can join on. And so basically this is an interactive online trivia type of quiz. Have a few fun questions about some of the things you've learned so far. And so we'll see how this goes. So you guys are already in your teams. You can designate, D1 or D2 or D3, whatever district you're part of. And then you can also give yourself a little separate name to go with that. So this pin here is what you have to enter in this pin.
Well, I have a question that says, are you a teacher or a student?
Oh, you just answer there's just like a little registration, I guess, pop up. So I'll walk around and help get people started, but once you get past their 2 initial questions, go ahead and enter in this PIN code, and then you can enter in your team name.
Are we gonna just do one, or do you wanna do
And there is a little prize for the winning team. So it looks like we got 7 teams up. Yeah. And you guys won't see the questions until I hit the start button, so we're kind of waiting for everybody to log in here. So has everybody entered in the pin, the game pin? Yes, yes, good. I think we're waiting for one more. Yes, there's, I think a few moles that have joined in. So is she in? Is she in?
Yes.
All right, are you guys ready? Okay, here we go. You guys are gonna have about 20 to 30 seconds to answer each question, and we have about 15 questions for you guys, okay? And just remember, the winning team will get a little prize. It'll automatically give points to those that answer correctly. All right, here we go.
Get ready. Ooh, check it out. Question 1. 3, 4, 7. Okay, look. Team talk, discuss the answer. What is the average water use per person per day?
27 seconds to go.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. All right, we'll go through. Oh, you were right.
All right, the answer is 75
Why are we in 3rd place?
gallons per day. Right, let's see here
Points behind District 6.
which team. So it looks like District 7 is at the top. Mhm. Oh, these points are arbitrary. But if they got them all right.
Okay,
All right, so next question.
okay, that's true. I wondered what percentage of water, oh, 60. Where is it? Are you sure, 30? This is 35, 1/3. You were right.
All right, the answer is 55%. Let's see who got it right.
We're still 3rd place.
Good. District 7.
Look at water girls. I like that.
All right. Ready for the next question?
Yeah.
This is easy, true or false? It's true. All right, let's see. District 7, still on top. All right, next question. Here we go. This is for 1,000 points, guys.
I think it's all of the above. I think it's all of the above. Too fast? Well, because I remember the reducing urban runoff part. Well, it says too fast. Now it won't let me do anything.
Right. Answers all of the above.
D7 still in there.
D7. You guys are on fire. Right, next question. Answer is Coyote Creek.
She got it.
Oh, District 7. All right.
That's all right.
Next question.
Oh, when we shove too much water. Whatever you call that. Yeah, subsidence.
Don't share the answer so loud, guys. You're giving away your cards.
Too fast. That is too fast.
Yeah, it looks like everybody got this one right. Woohoo!
You know our vocabulary.
Vocab test. All right. Next question.
You think so? I don't think so. All right. All right. She's okay. Well, she said 29. We'd rather not go that far. Yeah. Nope.
All right. 15.8. Looks like most of you got it right.
Okay, we'll be meeting you in the back.
District 7 is ahead, leading the pack.
That's okay.
Next question.
Oh, I don't remember this. Me either. 6 million. All right, let's do. I don't know. Oh, 8 million.
The answer is 8 million. This was shared by Miguel last week, so hope you guys are taking good notes. All right, next question.
Turned right to it.
District 7, still ahead. See if anybody here can catch up.
Oh,
This was covered during my Speakers Bureau overview presentation, session 1. Hint, hint. Yes, it's an open book test.
Well, no, I mean, we're making it.
Yeah.
10.
That's right, 10. We have 10 reservoirs and dams in the county. Right. District 7, leading the pack. Oh yeah, they're arbitrary, but if they get them all right. All right, next question.
Now I understand this.
Answer is true. Everybody got that one right.
Thank goodness.
Right, next question. Right. Answer is 275 miles.
Okay. We learned that
District 7. District 4 is kind of catching up here. All right, next question.
I'm not looking it up anymore. So many. 105,000. It's too late. We got it right. Yeah, finally. Dang it, they got it
Right. Got 2 more questions to go, guys. Is that true or false? I hope you guys get this question right. Yes, you did. Yes, we do not send monthly water bills. All right. Ooh, District 4. You pulled ahead. All right, question 14. It's a pretty easy one.
We chose this music. It's pretty good. I kind of like it.
Santa Clara County. All right. All right, I think this is the last question, guys. Better put on your thinking caps. Right, the answer is Central Valley Project, federal. All right, let's see. It looks like D4 has taken over. Right, congrats. All right, I have a little prize for each of you.
No, we're D6.
All right, I have another little icebreaker activity, but I think I'm going to save it for the end because we're a few minutes behind. So I'm going to just go ahead and invite Rochelle Blank up to present her presentation on the South San Francisco Bay Shoreline Project.
That's funny. That's cool.
Labels? Oh, let's see here. Slideshow.
Those little itty bitty numbers, I don't remember.
Right.
There gotta be girls.
I can go fast too if you want me.
It was true, and I didn't answer it. That's a good thing, because I was answering.
You ready? Yes. So hi, my name is Rochelle Blank, and I'm a Capital Engineering Unit Manager in our Watersheds Design and Construction Division. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to come and update you on or help educate you on the South San Francisco Bay Shoreline Project. And this is a multi-objective project. It is, I know Jessica gave you an overview of the Safe Clean Water Program. It is in the Safe Clean Water Program. It's priority E7. And it's not only a multi-objective project, it's a multi-watershed project. So this project is a U.S. Army Corps of Engineer authorized project, and it's in partnership with not only the Army Corps, but as well as the California State Coastal Conservancy, the Water District, and Fish and Wildlife. And my apologies, I'm not up to date with my new logo, so sorry. So, so the project has some key objectives. The primary one is coastal flood protection with inclusion of resiliency for sea level rise over 50 years. And the Coastal Conservancy is partnering with us for the other objective, which is ecosystem restoration, return of tidal habitat that has been lost due to commercial production of salt. And I'll have photos to go along with this. And with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, because they are one of the major landowners for 50% of the project area. So, as I noted, the project is congressionally authorized, and it actually began in 2005. And it's for the Santa Clara County shoreline area from Palo Alto all the way to North San Jose. And it covers 18 miles. So in 2005, they began looking at all of the 18 miles. And it's taken years of collaboration and coordination with many key stakeholders and regulatory agencies. In 2011, because of the time it was taking just to progress this project as far as we got it in 2011, all the partners who are, you can see in the photo here, from 2006 to 2015, some of them people who remained on the project through that whole time, at least a half dozen of them. It was decided in 2011 that looking at 18 miles of shoreline all at once was just a huge endeavor, and it was taking many, many years as well as lots of money. So in 2011, they had collected enough information about the shoreline area to decide that maybe they need to move forward focusing on one particular area the most. And that particular area ended up being the North San Jose area, which includes the community of Aviso and the San Jose Santa Clara Regional Wastewater Facility, as well as the district's Advanced Water Purification Center. So as I noted in this picture, we're partnering with the Army Corps. The first one shows a lot of the Army Corps staff out there in the field doing the first site reconnaissance. And then in 2015, almost 10 years later, the same chief of engineers that were present on day one were present in 2015 to authorize the project. So we now have an authorized project as of 2015, focusing, as I said, on the North San Jose area, which includes Alviso, the San Jose Santa Clara Regional Wastewater Facility. U.S. Fish and Wildlife is about at the midway point where you see a number 2 there at the Don Edwards Wildlife Refuge. The refuge ponds are actually in blue from 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Those ponds are owned by Fish and Wildlife and are in the project footprint. Pond A18 is owned by the San Jose Santa Clara Regional Wastewater Facility, and district will be taking ownership of that probably end of this year, earliest next year at the latest. The project footprint is going to follow the former salt pond berms of A12, A13, and I'm sorry, I don't have it labeled, but where it says levee in red, that's pond A16 and then pond A18 on the east. We cross 2 major facilities. One is the Union Pacific Railroad, which is highly used by not only Union Pacific Railroad, but commuter trains throughout our Bay Area. And then Artesian Slough is actually the wastewater facility's outfall, and it can pump out to 180 million gallons a day of water to the bay, just from that facility. So we have to figure out how to cross it. This project will tie into, on the east, Coyote Creek, is a former Corps project. It is designed to provide a 100-year flood protection. So we're gonna tie into that 100-year, what we call fluvial flood protection system. And on the west, beginning at the Alviso County Marina Park, is also known as Guadalupe River. That too is designed to provide 100-year fluvial flood protection. So our project will tie from one fluvial system to the next and provide the community the added 100-year coastal flood protection. And as I noted, the sea level rise component as well. So the authorized project comes with a pretty large price tag just for 4 miles of levee. It's $177 million. The federal share of that cost is about $74 million. And what we call the non-federal sponsor shares is $103 million. And the non-federal sponsors consist of the Water District and Coastal Conservancy, the state agencies. Now, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, as a major landowner, is not contributing by dollars, they're contributing by the land. And most of that land was purchased back in about 2003. And so there were millions of dollars spent to purchase that land. And as I noted, the 3 major components of the project are flood risk management, ecosystem restoration, and then making sure we provide the recreation component on top of our levees to complete bay trail spine components that are gaps in the system now. There'll be about 4 miles of levee. The community itself, the area we're protecting, is about 5,500 people who live and work and commute through the area, through not only Alviso, but through state route Highway 237. There's about 1,100 structures in the area, including the $3 billion regional wastewater facility. The ecosystem restoration, those ponds, I had in the former slide a 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 18. Those shown in blue is about 2,900 acres of former cargo salt ponds that we're proposing to restore back to tidal habitat. And then, as I noted, the new levee system will allow for a trail system that will be ADA compliant. We're going to have a ADA compliant pedestrian bridge crossing at the Union Pacific Railroad, as well as the outfall structure of the wastewater facility. So the project's needed. This is a kind of a photo of, or image of, the flooding potential that could happen in the area. This image came from the Corps of Engineers per their calculation, and it's actually not quite of the highest sea level rise scenario. So the highest sea level rise scenario would advance a little bit further inland, but it kind of gives you an idea that of the areas prone to flooding. The light blue areas are greater than 10 feet, and as you progress inland, they get a little bit shallower, but there are still areas to be flooded there. The actual treatment plant is not in the 100-year floodplain, but if we get all the way to the 2.59 feet of sea level rise, fringes of that do start entering into it. And again, this is the intermediate sea level rise level. And like all communities, there's fire departments, schools, libraries, residences, industrial buildings, and some habitat. A lot of the areas that could get up to 10 feet is what we call New Chicago Marsh, and it's part of the refuge area as well. It'll be landward side of our flood protection because it's a managed water body, and it's got habitat that's already sustaining some of the endangered species like mouse, and what we don't want to do is compromise its managed system as well. So I don't know if anyone's ever been out in Alviso and walked along any of these salt pond berms, but the way these berms were first implemented or placed to ring the water bodies is backhoes would come and just dig sort of on the water side of the berm, dig up some muck and dirt and plop it on the berm top. They're not engineered, it's just whatever mud was adjacent to those levees, or sorry, berms, and they were just kind of laid there, driven on, and they would do that periodically, annually, just to keep them in this state as they drove on them, and they harvested the salt from the pond waters. Flash forward, and what we need to do is to bring the ecosystem restoration component or the habitat life back is start breaching these ponds. And the underlying footprint, as you can tell from an aerial, you see squiggly lines that look like they run through the ponds. When Cargill harvested and managed water through these ponds, they didn't disturb the very bottom. So they just kind of wrung the bay with berms, earthen berms, filled it with water, and transferred the water from one pond to another. And that's why they're numbered 9, 10, 11. So if the water had entered in 9, eventually it would be transferred to 10, 11. And as it got transferred, the salinity and concentration of it got more intense and more intense, to where when they got to the last pond, they'd let it dry out, and then they were able to harvest the crystallized salt from it. So underneath these pond water surfaces are still where the sloughs all existed out there. So what the project proposes to do is to come in, and where you see it looks like water would have connected to the bay, but was stopped by a earthen berm that was rung around it. We're gonna go through and open those berms, those former slough areas up, breach the berms, and return the tidal exchange into these ponds to help restore that habitat. So the project's needed to one thing, protect the community from the coastal flooding and future sea level rise, as well as return a lot of this lost habitat. So the project's broken up into reaches, and reaches kind of are defined by the geotechnical ground makeup below that berm portion, by features such as from the marina to the railroad, it's a good stopping point. From the railroad to Artesian Slough is another good stopping point. And from Artesian Slough to Coyote Creek would be another good stopping point. So we call it 4 reaches of levee that we would construct, as well as crossings at the Union Pacific Railroad and an Artesian Slough. And then the ecotone areas are we call them 2 areas because we have the east side, which is ponds A9 through 15, and then the west side, which is pond A18. The pond, the 2 ponds in the middle are already part of the South Bay Salt Pond Restoration Project, and they have an ultimate goal of returning 90% of the ponds back to tidal action and leaving 10% as water bodies. And one might ask why. I don't know if anyone here might have an idea why. Why would they not return all of them to tidal habitat? So the answer is because birds have become accustomed to some of the open water bodies. And if you return them all, you are sort of disturbing birds, the waterfowl birds who seek out the open water body. So they have, at one end of the spectrum, the South Bay Salt Pond has a 50-50 success to return 50% of these ponds to tidal action, up to the max 90-10% ratio, which means they want to try and return ultimately 90% back, but leave some water out there for the waterfowl. So this is I'm going to go through some cross sections to kind of give you an idea of what exists out there. So what exists out there right now is an earthen berm where we just dug into the ponds, lifted the dirt and muck and placed it on the berms. Those berms are an average height anywhere from 6 to 8 feet. So they're non-engineered. If we get some high storm events and natural breaching occurs and we get wave action over these, they will break through these and the water will come in and overtake probably the community with coastal flooding. So we need to engineer these berms. And what we're going to do is go ahead and lower the water in the pond, and we're going to come in with engineered clean fill. So we're going to remove that berm and push it out into the ponds, and I'll get to why we're doing that in a minute. And we're going to come in with engineered fill to build up these levees to an elevation of 15.2 feet. These berms out there right now are about 8 feet average high. So we're almost, not quite doubling them, but it's going to be engineered almost doubling them. And so the ecosystem restoration component has an element called ecotone. Anyone know what an ecotone is? So an ecotone is kind of a living horizontal levee. So our engineered levees are going to have a slope of 3 to 1. They're pretty defined. And you could still go up and down them, but it could be challenging. They're sloped. An ecotone is going to be kind of a gradual bringing in of dirt and just kind of letting it go out into the ponds so that it's about a 30 to 1 slope. It's pretty flat. It'll extend out about 300 feet. So the top of the engineered levee is going to have a top of 16 feet the footprint of that engineered levee is about 100 feet. The ecotone is going to go out into the ponds about 300 feet. And the ecotone is there to serve several functions. The most important is as our water surfaces rise with sea level rise, it allows these plants, where it says low marsh, middle marsh, and high marsh, to migrate up with that water surface. And one of our species that we're trying to protect out here is the salt marsh harvest mouse, and it lives in a certain plant that grows where these marshes are, and that's called pickleweed. So if we do not provide what we call refugia, or a way for the mouse to retreat as waters rise, they could just drown. So the ecotone is an important habitat for our special endangered species out there, like the salt marsh harvest mouse, as well as burrowing owls or the snowy plover, which are all protected species the refuge is trying to restore and return back to the area. So over time, as our seas rise 50 years out to 2067, which is the life of this project, we're projecting 2.59 feet of high sea level rise. You can see how that marsh can migrate up that ecotone, that horizontal slope. In addition, that ecotone is pretty important to the levee. It's important to the levee because, as we know, we're going to open these up to the bay and return the tidal action. And during large storms, we get lapping water. So that ecotone will kind of help dampen wave effects and storm pounding on the levee. So it should also help us have a levee system that's better sustainable against that action. That's the resiliency part of it. So as I noted about the recreation component, there's a little picture of the salt marsh harvest mouse living in the pickleweed. The middle picture at the top is the California ridgeway rails. It's also used to be known as a California clapper whale. And then there's the human interaction, wildlife-oriented recreation. So the majority of the lands in this area are owned by U.S. Fish and Wildlife. The district will take ownership of Pond A18, and the refuge has a goal to protect and restore as much wildlife habitat as possible. This is an image of the existing recreational features out there today. So today, one can walk or drive to the Alviso County Park Marina Park and start walking these trails that start at the marina, follow along A12 to the west to A11, A10, A9, A14, A13, and come back in. That's a 9-mile trail loop. However, if they want to go over to walk around Pond A16, they gotta watch for the trains and dart across the tracks. And then they could then expand their experience to walk around Pond A16. Today, because A18 is owned by the city of San Jose, and it's closed off to the public, so there is no public access in the A18 area. There are also Bay Trail. The orange also represents some of the Bay Trail spurs or spines or circles or rings or loops. But there's gaps in that trail. So as I said, there is really no formal connection from the west side of the railroad track to the east side of the railroad track. And along 237, if bicycle commuters want to use a route along 237 to commute, they're kind of stuck there, what we call Highway 237 in Zanker, and they would have to take surface streets. So after the project, we are proposing to, since we're purchasing A18 for the project, to open up the A18 area for the public so they can then walk along an area they haven't been able to walk along at all since 2003 and beyond. That's about 3.3 miles. In addition, the district, as I said, Coyote Creek on the far east side is a flood protection project, and we own the maintenance roads, and they're there to provide 100-year flood protection. We're gonna, on the non-federal sponsors dime only, not part of the core project, the Coastal Conservancy and district are partnering to kind of complete the gap to connect the end of the shoreline project all the way up to McCarthy Boulevard and 880 there to the Bay Trail. And then down along 237 at Zanker Road, we're going to connect the bicycle trail all the way to the Guadalupe River system. And then we're going to provide the pedestrian safe crossing across the Union Pacific Railroad, as well as our closure structure across Artesian Slough, which is the outfall for the San Jose Santa Clara Regional Wastewater Facility. People will be able to walk across that as part of the trail. So we're actually gonna complete about 7.7 miles of trail. And although, yes, in A9, 10, 11, and 12, in order to return those back to tidal action, we have to breach those berms. There are some trails lost out there. However, the benefits of returning those back to tidal action and the habitat outweighs those trails lost. Plus, we're gaining trails on the east side that weren't accessible to the public anyways. So some other components of the project, where you see the little yellow dots that go westerly and just end, those are gonna be what we call trail spurs. You'll be able to walk out on those. There'll be benchings, interpretive signage, and viewing platform areas, so you can kind of have a bird's eye view, a little higher view to see out, to see what's happening in those ponds once they're restored. So I'm gonna kind of get a little bit into the construction of this. The project will be constructed in phases, and the first phase, sorry, my date's wrong, it's actually 2019 to 2023. And the first phase will be constructing what we call the levees, closure structures, and the first pond breaches. So the first, we're gonna begin at Alviso Marina and extend north towards the railroad track with the levee, then continue along the levee segment from the railroad track to the Fish and Wildlife Don Edwards Center, which is at the far right of Reach 3 there. Then we're gonna continue along Pond A18, all the way to the end with the levee. Then we'll come back and do the gaps across the railroad and across Artesian Slough. And once that line of defense is in for the coastal flood protection, we're gonna go ahead and breach the first two ponds, A12 and A18. Now, as I said, Coastal Conservancy is partnering on the project. The reason why is this is up to 2,900 acres that their goal is to return and restore back to habitat life, tidal exchange, and for the wildlife. So we're following what they have developed, and it's called an adaptive management approach. So these ponds have been sitting there for a while with water, and as we know, this is the north end of Guadalupe River, and I don't know if anyone knows what's at the very upper watershed of Guadalupe River. The new Almaden and Quicksilver mines, which used to mine mercury. So over the years, quite a bit of mercury has been flowing down the system and out to the bay, and some has ended up in these ponds. So what South Bay Salt Pond Project has to do is that as they restore these ponds one by one, they do have to monitor for about 5 to 10 years the effects. Are we disturbing mercury? How much mercury is in them? How is it affecting the wildlife? Is it affecting the bird eggs? So they do have to do some biological studies as we start breaching these ponds. And it's what they call an adaptive management approach. So at the end of building the levee in 2023, we will then breach these first two ponds, and then they won't have to do, we're estimating the first phase being about 5 to 6 years of adaptive management, in order for them to be informed of whether they can continue then restoring the next set of ponds. And the next set of ponds that we've identified is ponds A9, 10, and 11. And again, it will go through an adaptive management period. Once we've proven and shown that there's no negative effects, we will continue with the last 3 ponds. And that breaching will occur in about 2032, and that'll still be about 10 more years of required monitoring. So the whole life of this project, if you think about it, from 2005 to 2042, to be able to return and establish this habitat. So I just wanted to give you a flavor of the schedule. This is the construction schedule for the first phase. The Corps received in July of 2018 through the Bipartisan Act Supplemental Disaster Funds the full $177 million. This is really great for the project because the first time in a long time, we don't have to look ahead fiscal year by fiscal year and pray and hope Congress authorizes the project, the next chunk of construction funds. We were given the construction funds all at once. That doesn't mean we're off the hook from paying for this of our share of $104 million. We do have to pay the Corps back timely. But part of receiving that fund all up front is Congress basically saying, no more excuses. We've given you all this money. We expect you to build everything you need to by fiscal year 23. So we're now under a different kind of pressure. And one thing I really didn't talk about this is it's taken a long time to get here. It's because a lot of the collaboration, coordination, and challenges. So even though you think you've got a design, it's a good project,
It's like even the funding has a challenge. So now we have the challenge of building this thing by fiscal year 23. And I want to highlight the big move dirt in red. The key significance of that is this is a dirt project. We need about 1 million cubic yards of engineered fill for those levees. And we need about another 1 million cubic yards for the ecotone, that 30-to-1 horizontal slope. So the district's main role on a federal project is to make sure we have all the rights of way and easements that we need to construct the project. And it's also been put upon the district to start getting all the dirt out there. So the good news is hopefully April 1st, we're gonna start moving dirt and placing it in Pond A12, the first reach that's to be constructed. Get the dirt on site so that it's there and ready for the Corps just to start building what they need. And with that, I don't know if there's time for questions or if anyone has any. Yes?
If I understand you, then the existing levees, 8 feet of them, have to be completely removed, pushed out into the salt ponds now?
Correct.
Because you're not gonna use that.
So that levee fill material is already in place for us as an advantage. It's the ecotone fill. So remember I said we need about 1 million cubic yards of ecotone fill just to build that 30-to-1 slope. So the good news is we're gonna be able to bring in dirt. We're gonna lower the pond water in the ponds, bring in our engineered fill, place it there. It's gonna have to be placed a little further away from the berm because as soon as the Corps is ready to come in and start construction, they're gonna push those berms right into what I call that burrow ditch, which is where the backhoes used to come in and pull up the muck and create that berm. There is actually underneath that water surface an underwater channel. So we're gonna push that berm right into that channel, create a flat surface. They'll be able to move the engineered fill, start building their levee. Mm-hmm.
The engineered fill, does that include a certain mix of gravel size and sand?
Not so much. It has to be engineered and it has to meet the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers engineered specs. And like I said, we just put out a material broker procurement process where we're bringing in the engineered fill. So the contractor we hired has identified some quarry sites where they will have to do some mixing of that fill that's at that site with certain levels of constituents that are sandy and cobbly to get that engineered fill requirement. We're also under strict regulation to make sure it's clean. Regional Water Quality Control Board has a lot of testing requirements of our soil to make sure it can be in contact with the water. We don't need, we have problems with high metals and mercury. It has to be clean so that there's no chemical reactions with the water.
And those quarries and that contractor has all been identified?
Correct. So, and there are it's gonna be about 30 days worth of material testing. It's not just, oh, we trust you, it's clean. It has to be sampled, samples split. The Corps wants their crack at testing it. The contractor has to test it, and then we're gonna test it. So there's almost 3 rounds of testings, and then all that information has to go to the Regional Water Quality Control Board for approval to get the green light to start hauling it in. So that's the phase we're in right now, is we're getting that soil mixed and getting all our prep work to show that dirt can meet it to start hauling it in. Okay. Well, I appreciate your interest. Thank you.
All right, I think since we're already close to 8 o'clock and I always try to end our meetings here on time. We did have one more activity, but I'm gonna skip over that. And if you do have additional questions, what you can do is email me, and I'm pretty good about taking the questions and then forwarding on to the subject matter expert and then emailing them back. That way we can get out of here and get going home. But before we go, I do wanna make a few announcements regarding the field trip, which is in, I think, about 2 weeks from now on Saturday, March 23rd. So I'm really excited to say that I think most of the ambassadors are okay with extending the hours. So we have a really exciting lineup for you guys. However, if there are 1 or 2 of you that just can't do the entire day, you do have the option of either meeting us for the morning portion, and then after lunch we can shuttle you back here to headquarters, or you could do the opposite, is where you can meet us at the Purification Center here in San Jose at lunchtime and stay with us for the afternoon. So we do want to accommodate and acknowledge that not everybody can make that adjustment. And so I did email kind of the itinerary for that day. The most important thing that I want to share with the group right here while you're here is that we will depart very promptly on that morning. So we're not going to be mixing and mingling and doing the usual icebreakers that we do at each of these sessions. We are going to start promptly at 8. We're going to grab breakfast, take it on the bus, have the welcoming on the bus, and depart right between 8:15 and 8:20. Because we do have a very long journey down to South County. We're going to San Luis Reservoir. We're going to go and have a wonderful tour of the visitor center out there. And we're going to have a lot of on-bus presentations. So the whole bus ride, the whole experience will be kind of one long, experience and on-bus tour. We're going to also drive by Anderson Dam in Morgan Hill. Then we'll go have a tour of the Purification Center. And then we'll have presentations on our fisheries and the fish ladders, and then after that we'll have, we're going then to Coyote Creek to Rock Springs to see the flooding and the work that we've done since then, and then we're gonna finish up with downtown, with the Guadalupe River Downtown Project, and then drive back to headquarters. So we do have a very full day that day, so I just wanna emphasize, please do make sure that you're here early that day. On that Saturday, we will set up breakfast and registration as early as 7:45. So we will do a quick check-in, get your stuff, and get on the bus, and then as soon as we're ready, we will depart. So do not be late. Yes.
What should we be bringing?
You really don't need to be, you can bring your program binders, but we will provide, breakfast, lunch, so you don't need, and snacks, so you don't need to worry about that. There will be a bathroom on the bus. And the most important thing is just wear comfortable clothes and sneakers, because we will do a lot of walking. So just make sure you're wearing sneakers. You got, either layers. I don't think it's going to rain that day. We did check the forecast. Looks like it's going to be sunny, but bring a jacket. Make sure you have the things that you need to be comfortable for the day. Oh, yes, you do need closed-toed shoes for the tour on the Purification Center, and that just means sneakers. So no, sandals, flip-flops, high heels. So please do wear sneakers. That's very important because we are touring a working facility in a water treatment plant. So you definitely do want to have the right shoes, so sneakers. All right, and with that, we're going to skip the rest. The survey will be emailed out to you guys online like we did last time. So I'll be ready, so I'll be sending that out probably tomorrow morning. So be on the lookout for the session 3 post survey. We really appreciate your feedback. We did try to incorporate some of that feedback for tonight by shortening up the presentations and not packing it to the rim. And Sherilyn's handouts will be out here on the table if you're interested in the grants programs.
This is going rain or shine?
Yes, rain or shine, although I did check the forecast and there's, as far as I know, no rain.
Rain on either day. It's 2 weeks away. So.
Yeah. It's pretty much, unless it's like a major like flood storm, but it will take place, rain or shine. Little water is not going to hurt, guys. We're going to get wet in the field. All right. Thank you so much for your attention and your participation. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much.